Is Joseph Woll ready to go? What's wrong with Auston Matthews? And injury news continues to pile up for Team Canada. Lots to talk about with insider Darren Dreger this morning. Dregs, the Leafs have lost 3 of their last 4 as they host the Hawks tonight, but help could be on its way.
Yeah, in the name of Joseph Woll. So best case scenario really for the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltenders. Craig Berube, the head coach, acknowledged just over a week ago they felt that the Joe Woll injury wasn't going to be long-term, that it might be 7 days, slightly beyond that, and that's really what it worked out to. But it's not like the Toronto Maple Leafs have been plagued by goaltending issues per se of late. Their problems extend far beyond the crease, but there's a shot of confidence throughout the bench, throughout the room, getting Joseph Woll back in the net against the Chicago Blackhawks. And Craig Berube also acknowledged that Anthony Stolarz continues to see doctors. You know, he's lined up to see yet another specialist. Berube says that Stolarz is not making the progress that he hoped he would, and he also suggested that it is not concussion related. So there's all kinds of speculation around the Toronto Maple Leafs net minding, but a shot in the arm for the Leafs in getting Joseph Woll back.
Speaking of concern around the Leafs, Auston Matthews is on a pace for a career worst 56 points, Dregs. Before the season, we were asking if he could challenge for the Rocket or maybe even the Art Ross. Now he's not even the top 100 in the league in scoring. Even Berube's calling him out publicly right now. So here's the question, Dregs. Is Matthews hurt or just really struggling?
Well, we continue to be told flat out, Gino, that the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs is not hurt. He is not injured. There is nothing lingering. And maybe it's just the extended hangover of not having his good friend and line mate, Mitch Marner, as part of the solution, part of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization right now. I know at the start of the year, the hope was that Auston Matthews would be able to adjust his game, do things maybe a little differently, not always be the finish guy, but it hasn't worked out that way. Berube has put different pieces on that top line with Matthews and Matthew Nyes when they've remained healthy, but they haven't been able to find a sustained chemistry. So the obvious applies. You know, what about General Manager Brad Treliving? We know that Treliving would love to add another top 6 forward, maybe 2 top 6 forwards. But based on what we saw between the Minnesota Wild and the Vancouver Canucks, sure, logically you can look at something like that and say big deals like this can happen. But the Minnesota Wild had the pieces to lure Quinn Hughes from Vancouver. The Toronto Maple Leafs cupboard is not as stocked. And that type of player, the type of playmaking player that Auston Matthews needs on that line, obviously isn't available. But as the season progresses, Gino, you can tell that the heat is going to elevate here.
No kidding. Speaking of injuries, they're throwing a wrench into Team Canada's plans to announce their final roster for the Olympics. Dregs, we know the roster is due December 31st, but Connor Bedard's out until January. Now there are a couple other guys that could be in doubt as well.
Yeah, we'll get injury updates, if not today, then as the week progresses. But we're looking at forward Brandon Hagel of the Tampa Bay Lightning, goaltender Darcy Kemper of the Los Angeles Kings, both those players injured on Monday night. Why not throw Connor Bedard into the equation as well, right? The news on Bedard isn't as bad as was originally feared, so the hope is that Bedard could be back in the mix with the Blackhawks in early January. Again, we'll have to wait and see what the final tally is coming out of the Tampa Bay Lightning on Hagel. Likewise for Darcy Kemper. We know that Hagel was on the team. As for Kemper, most definitely in the conversation for the trio of goaltenders that Canada will take to Italy, along with Logan Thompson and Jordan Bennington. All it does is confuse the process if you're Team Canada management. They expected that they'd have to contend with injuries. Now they might have to in terms of the decision making that will take place between now and December 31st.
Driggs, 4 days after the Quinn Hughes trade to the Wild, the fallout continues. That includes teams that were making a serious bid for Hughes, lost out, and now they're looking for Plan B.
Yeah, and right at the top of the list is the New Jersey Devils. And it's not just because they didn't land Quinn Hughes. It's more about addressing the wants and needs. Now, the good news from New Jersey's perspective is that they'll get Brett Pesce back into the mix. So that's going to help their blue line. I think he's expected to return as early as tomorrow, Wednesday. Jack Hughes is not that far behind. He is likely going to return earlier than expected. So internally, that's a boost for the New Jersey Devils. Tom Fitzgerald, the GM of the Devils, though, is looking for some help. They like the idea, Gino, of adding a centerman. So not a defenseman. Obviously, Quinn Hughes would have bolstered that blue line. The pieces that would have had to have gone Vancouver just didn't make sense to the New Jersey Devils at this point. So they want to build around what they already have. They feel like Dawson Mercer is a natural winger. He's played wing of late, but maybe they can slot him over there full time if they can land a centerman. A lot of teams in the market for a center, so Tom Fitzgerald has a long hunting plan ahead of him.
Dregs, you got a lot on your plate. It's a trade freeze kicks in later this week. That's the early edition of IT, the full insider trading with Dregs, CJ, and Pierre is coming up on the early edition of SportsCenter.